We will call this meeting to order. This is the informational meeting for Tuesday, December 10th, and I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance at this meeting. We will take this opportunity for any City Council open discussion that there might have. Is there anything the councilors would like to bring up at this time? Councilor Staggers, please.
Yes, I think all of you have in front of you an amendment that I have tonight. And you might wonder, what's going on here? It says a motion to amend the agreement by striking sections 6, 7, 8, 10, and 12. Just generally speaking, what this would do would have less requirements, or I should say get rid of government strings that would be imposed on the ICE people. That's all it is. Rex, I think you have an amendment which is maybe a little bit the opposite, but that's what this is all about.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Staggers. Is there anything else here? Any questions? Yes, Councilor Karski.
Regarding Councilor Staggers' amendment, I know that we're not giving money to these organizations. We're actually buying equipment and having it installed and then basically depreciating it off of our books is how I understand it. And I know Karen Leonard from our legal office has spent a lot of time on these agreements. Would that in any way jeopardize, by taking these sections out of there, the intent or the ability of us to buy equipment and therefore pass it on to them to use?
Good afternoon. I'm Karen Leonard, Deputy City Attorney. Thank you for asking the question. The sections that, as I understand it, that you're intending to amend would be to remove Section 6 on reservation of ice for public skating, having Section 7, which required the city representative from having a seat on the board. Section 8 is on insurance requirements. Section 10 is on default and termination, and Section 12 is on audit of the books. And part of the reason that we put those in is we are using taxpayer dollars, and taxpayer dollars under our South Dakota state constitution require that those get expended for a public purpose. And so we wanted to put safeguards and language into this agreement so that the money would be used for a public purpose, because that would violate our state constitution if they were not. And I can tell you that these groups have organized as a 501c3, and they have said that under their articles of incorporation that they are going to be open to the public and whatnot. But should anything change in the future, because some of this equipment is very long-term use, we wanted to ensure that we had some mechanisms in place. And so that was the reason for that language.
Councilor Staggers first, please.
Yeah, and once again, basically, I mean, these are just, additional government strings for the ICE people to get this. And, according to the Constitution, we are using public money. And in the process of using public money, we're purchasing these assets. Once again, if you want to have a lot of government controls and strings, sure, vote against this amendment. If you feel that it's a little excessive, then vote for the amendment.
Thank you. Councilor Rolfing, please.
Yeah, Karen.
Yes.
Would this agreement be any different had we just given them the money rather than bought the capital, used CIP money?
Well, your CIP money, and I'll let Tracy speak to that, can only be used for certain purposes, right, such as capital equipment.
So in other words, yeah, I understand that. And,
right.
And but if we had just given them the money instead of said, here, we got to buy, because it comes out of CIP money, we've got to buy equipment, and then you can use it, and you're responsible for keeping it up and then doing all that stuff. Would we have written this agreement any different? And I guess what I'm looking for here is, would there have been a better reporting process back to us had that money been given to them as a gift to put into their general account rather than buy the equipment?
I think to answer your question, the other agreements that I've done where we use public money to other organizations has the same language in it.
Doesn't have the ability to go in and audit or anything like that? They're general accounts.
We have the ability to go in and look at their books and these other agreements pertaining to the terms of how our money is used and spent.
Right, okay,
Yes.
now pretend that the money was just given to them and they can use it for whatever they want. Would we have just the right to go in and audit then, the books? Or would we just be able to audit what they told us they used the money for?
Would you like to, just so I understand your question, do you want it to see a bigger financial picture than just what our money is being spent for?
No, I just want you to answer my question.
Okay, no, I'm just trying to understand.
Okay,
it.
that's exactly what I'm saying. If we had given them the money instead of bought the pieces of equipment, what kind of audit paragraph would be in there?
It would be on how our money has been utilized
Which
and
would have
spent by
been the entire
organization.
books. Because they could use it any way they wanted, so therefore we would be in and be able to audit the entire financial statement of the organization, correct?
I'm not a CPA, so I can't say for sure how we would audit their financial
Oh, come on.
records, but legally, I would just say we would have right to the information relating to how our money was spent.
Right, and so if we gave it to them, it just only follows suit then. If we gave it to them with no strings attached, they could just put it in their account and spend it on anything they wanted. We would probably have the right to go in and audit to make sure that that money is being spent in the way that was beneficial to the people of Sioux Falls.
I can't answer for sure what we would do because that would be turned over to our finance department. But yes, I would say that you can go in and audit to see how our money was spent, and you would see their records. If it was in several buckets, you would see those buckets of how it was spent.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
just if I may, or go ahead.
One more, please.
Okay. On August 15th, 2012, in a working session we had here, I was in conversation with Don Kearney and Dave Fisher, and here's the exchange, or the notes from that. It says, Rolfing asked if the MOU requires a financial statement from the organization on an annual basis, and if they would allow an audit. Kearney stated that the MOU does not get that specific, but added that a majority of agreements require a quarterly or annual financial report and audit. Kearney added that this will be required. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew in the record that that was what was going to happen. Let me see if there's anything else. Attorney office, large project. Okay. And so that's in the record that this is going to be part of the agreement at this point, which I don't believe it is at this point. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Karski?
I was just looking at 6, 7, 8, 10, and 12 and trying to decide if I like some of them or don't like any of them. And I may ask you to consider doing each one individually. I don't know yet. Instead of striking each one or all of them blanket en masse, but to take a look at each one individually, I'd like a little bit more time to read them a little bit more detail, I guess. So I don't know if you'd consider that, Councilor Staggers.
Karen?
That's fine.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
That's fine, Dean, yeah.
If I might, Karen, could you give your explanation one more time to this council, please? What you had stated at the beginning concerning this proposed amendment again. Could you please state this one more time for us for clarity, please?
Certainly. Under the South Dakota Constitution, it's Article 11, Section 2. It states that taxes shall be levied and collected for public purpose only. And we are using tax money collected here. And so we wanted to ensure that the terms of the agreement included the public purpose sections.
Okay, so what it says then, if I interpret it, I guess, the tax money is being used for public purpose. These items, you're just ensuring that that tax money is used for public purpose, or as they stated it would be used.
Absolutely.
Correct? So we're not just liberally giving them the money. In this case, we have identified specific assets that we will be purchasing. So therefore, we have set up a means by which we can ensure, in this case, that the money is being used. So we are addressing a specific use for this money, and you feel that we have the correct safeguards in place to ensure that the money is being used specifically as agreed upon in the agreement. Is that correct?
That's correct. I think we are trying to be prudent with the taxpayer dollar by making sure that the language has controls and mechanisms in it
Thank
to
you.
ensure that it's used for a public purpose.
Thank you. Are there any questions, other questions
Yes.
on this? Councilor Wardolph, please, Rex.
I look like Kenny.
Yeah.
It's the mustache.
Karen, as I remember this all being put together, the only reason we used CIP money was because that was the easiest way to get them the money, and the mayor had not put it into the general fund to be given to them. Am I correct on that?
Does that sound right, Tracy? Yeah, I think that sounds accurate. I haven't checked.
And that's the way I remember it, and thus my question, had it been just given to them, more of an audit clause would have been in this agreement. As you basically said, without saying yes, you kind of flirted around it. And so that's my contention, is that we gave them this money this way because that's the way the mayor directed us to do it, basically. And I'm in complete agreement with that. I love these two organizations, think they're great, and they're doing a great service for the city. But we're talking about substantial amounts of money here, $500,000 and $1.5 million, and for us to just not follow through on it just because we happen to give them an ice compressor and a few stands, and we want them to have some public time, just isn't enough, in my opinion, with this kind of a gift. So that's where I'm coming from.
Any other questions or any other comments at this time? One more, Councilor Staggers, please.
This is about something else.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't know, Karen, I don't know, maybe should be directed to you. But I think it was on November 11th, we received an email from Don Kearney, and dealing with the issue of a possible conflict of interest with the mayor and the Sioux Falls Tennis Association getting $500,000 from the city. And we got a reply, and let me just read 2 sentences of the reply. The issue raised is whether the mayor should conflict off from voting and signing the agreement. Yes, the mayor is conflicting off from voting and signing the agreement. So my understanding is that the mayor is not going to become involved in this. Is that fair to say?
It's my understanding that he is recusing himself from the vote as well as signing the agreement, yes.
And then so consequently tonight, how is this going to be dealt with? Are we going to have Councilman Intamin dealing with this issue tonight when we talk about it and debate it and things like that? Is that fair to say?
I'm going to defer to Dave Fifley, who will be here to give the guidance on that tonight.
Okay. Because
That's fair?
Yeah, I was just trying to anticipate what we should expect tonight on that.
I am under the assumption, Councilor Staggers, if I might, that he is going to recluse himself from the discussion on this one particular thing. And it's my understanding at that time he will probably pass the gavel on to me.
That sounds reasonable.
Is that? We were told that, by the way. He did mention that previously, that he was not going to be involved in the discussion. So therefore, I'm assuming he'll turn the gavel over to me.
That's good.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Are there any other comments at this time? Good, thank you. I appreciate that. And at this time, we'd like to move ahead with a November monthly financial report, and this is one that I am really anticipating. Thanks, Tracy. Director Turback.
Thank you and good afternoon. Tracy Turback with the Finance Office. I'm glad to hear you're so excited about this report today, even more so than normal, apparently.
It's a great time of year. I hope to see more as we go forward.
Well, there is, you have to look really, really hard, I think, to find anything negative to say about the city's financial situation, the local economy, and so with that, I'll get on with it and review some of the local economic indicators that we do track. As you know, unemployment certainly is one of a number of bright spots in the local economy. This graphic is really a 3-year view of what the local unemployment rate has been. You can see that each of the past 2 years it's improved, and throughout 2013 has continued to improve. The local rate now for September and October did drop below 3%, so it's currently at the 2.9%, and that compares with a statewide unemployment rate of 3.4 and a federal rate of 7.0. So we compare very, very favorably both within our state and of course nationally. I might mention too the employment numbers, the number of people actually working in the MSA currently, according to the statistics, is 131,650 people working. A year ago it was about 125,000, and so it's up about over 6,000 individuals working in Sioux Falls or within the MSA when compared to a year ago. So it's a significant number of additional people that are employed and working here in the local economy. So that's certainly driving a lot of what we're seeing happening on some of the other indicators. Building permits, again, no surprise here. You've seen this story kind of unfold all year long in terms of the value of building permits issued. We've got 1 month left to go this year, and we've already surpassed the best year on record, which was 2007, prior to the most recent recession. A year ago, through November, we had issued $414 million in building permits. This year, through November, that number has increased by more than $146 million. So through November, through the first 11 months of this year, the Building Services Department has issued more than $560 million in permits. It's just about a 35% increase from last year. When we look at 2011, which is on the graphic is the blue, represented by the blue line, the increase is even more stark. It's up over 100% from 2011, and that really wasn't a bad year. I mean, we saw a fair amount of activity in 2011, but we've more than doubled that through November of this year. And as I mentioned, 2007 up until this year had been the high water mark, so to speak. Through November, we've surpassed that by more than $37 million, and as I say, we still have a month to go yet. So very, very strong numbers in the construction activity locally, and we'll see just how long that level of activity can be sustained. Sales tax revenues, again, another solid bright spot in the local economy. This graphic is the rolling 12-month growth rate for our first and second penny sales tax revenues. For the past 2 years, up until this spring of 13, we'd seen about a 5% give or take growth rate, pretty steady for about 2 years' time. And then in about April of this year, we saw the growth really start to pick up, and you can see that reflected in this chart. About April or so of 2013, we started increasing, and it's gone from about 5% growth rate to now approaching 8% growth rate. So we've seen the activity pick up considerably since this past spring. Entertainment tax revenues, because of the more narrow tax base here, the motel rooms and restaurant meals and alcoholic beverages and ticketed events, it is a much narrower tax, and so it does lend itself to more volatility from month to month and from year to year. And this graphic reflects that when we compare this to the previous graphic, but still showing very solid improvement, continuing to grow in a strong way. We just from last month we saw an uptick we're at 5.7% growth now, and so certainly that's another encouraging area for our local economy. Looking now at the financial activity through November. This is our monthly chart on the general fund revenues and expenses comparing 2012 to 2013. So through November, we've essentially 92% of the year has lapsed. On our revenues, we've hit 95% of our budget, so our actual revenues compared to our anticipated revenues in the budget for this year, we're at 95%. So we're very much on track through November in collecting $123 million in revenue. A year ago, we were at 91%, so we're outpacing kind of where we were last year at this time as well. Some of the contributing things that are really driving revenues, some of them I've touched on already. Sales tax revenues are running higher than what had been budgeted. As you know, the federal reimbursements from FEMA for the ice storm last spring certainly contributed to that higher than budgeted revenues. Liquor licensing revenues are up quite a bit. As you've heard Jamie talk about recently, the number of licenses that have been issued and the dwindling supply of available licenses, as well, of course, as building permit fee revenue is running ahead of budget as well. On the expenditure side, through November, the general fund has expended $122.6 million. That represents 87% of our current budget. A year ago, we were at 86%, so we feel very good that we're on track with where we were a year ago. And of course, the major impact to our budget this year that was not anticipated was the Operation Timber Strike and the costs associated with that. But outside of that, everything is really running very well and on track with what was originally anticipated for 2013. So with that, I'll stand by for any questions you folks have.
Are there any questions for Director Turbach? Councilor Staggers, please.
Yeah, Tracy, the November 13, I'm just looking here, that, yeah, 7.8%. Do you think that's mostly due to we had a fantastic Black Friday, or is that due to some other things?
Yeah, none of the sales that would have occurred at the retail level in November are reflected in that number.
Oh, okay.
So we're always about 2 months behind in getting that those dollars in our hands from the state. So this really, the graphic represents the money that the city has received through the end of November. And in November, we would have been receiving sales tax revenues that were collected by the vendors in October.
In October, okay. So
it'll remain to be seen just how strong our
January will see that number?
Right, January is when most of the, what you might consider holiday sales revenues, sales tax revenues would show up. And if you look back at some of the historical numbers in the report, you'll see January is quite often the biggest month of the year in terms of the amount of sales tax revenue.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Ruffing, please.
Thank you. Tracy, I'm going to hearken back to page 1 on this report of your report, the big report that you've got, we've got, that says we're still at 23.6% of our reserves, fund balance, and we try to be at 25%. With the money coming in, when are we going to be at that point where we're at least at 25%? Are we going to end the year that way?
Well, if you want to take a close look at that page, and there are two columns of numbers there. One is titled current budget, and the other one is titled actual. And the 23.6% is based on the budgeted numbers for 2013. So that bottom line there in that column indicates that based on the current budget, we would anticipate $33.3 million in available fund balance. And that represents 23.6% of the $141 million budget for 2013.
But we're actually at $48 million?
What we've done this month, and we've added that percentage in the next column there on actual, which is where we actually are with regard to actual revenues and actual expenses, not estimated like a budget. So that $48.3 million of available fund balance is what we actually have at the end of November. And as a percent of that $141 million budget, that's 34.3%. So we're in very, very solid position to significantly exceed the 25% target.
Thank you for the
I
clarification.
don't see that changing drastically by the end of the year. You know, it will go several tenths one direction or the other, maybe another percentage point one direction or the other, but I think we'll end up pretty close to where we are today.
Fine, thank you very much.
Councilor Anderson, please.
Tracy, my favorite project here is the arterial street funding on page 12. Bottom left-hand corner, details of 2013 expenditures can be found on page 9 of the report. On page 9, basically, how am I going to identify these as arterial? Is there something here that I'm missing that would show me which projects here are arterial funding projects?
Yeah, I can try to get you there. Looking at page 9, this is one of a number of pages in the report that provide a lot of detail on the capital improvement projects. And if you look in the very first column there, the third bold subheading there is engineering. And right below engineering, you see another summary of arterial street expansion. And then indented from those, there are maybe a dozen different projects.
Just down to the major street?
Those
Okay.
are the arterial street expansion projects.
All right.
So
Thank
everything from Southeastern Avenue down to Cliff Avenue. Those would be the arterial street projects.
At least you found out.
Yeah, I have to read a little bit, huh?
Well,
Thank you, Tracy.
You're welcome.
Must have been a speck on the glasses, Kenny.
I've been doing a lot of reading lately.
You bet. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you very much, Tracy. We really do appreciate it. That's really about all that we had on the agenda. For next week's informational, I might put on that there really is nothing before this council, and I believe the committee meeting was canceled for next week.
Yes.
And we will probably, if nothing comes before me tonight, I'll probably cancel the informational for next week also. So we'll wait to see what happens, and then we'll address that. Yes, there will be a 7 o'clock meeting, and there is a lot on the agenda for the 7 o'clock meeting. Like I said, we are not going to have a Public Services Committee meeting, but we are going to have a work session, and that will be out in the multi-purpose room here. And this will be a working session, and during the working session, it's an opportunity for the councilors to ask a number of questions. There will be no public testimony or public input unless questions are asked by the councilors. Councilor Anderson will be chairing that. It's a great opportunity to ask some questions, and I'm sure there'll be some questions that will be asked there also. So, is there anything else to come before this informational meeting? Okay, in 10 minutes we will meet outside in the multi-purpose room. Meeting adjourned.